A man in his 60s is sitting on a stool in a hidden room beneath the server floor of a buried silo, wearing a headset pushed slightly back off his ears, reading numbers about his own dying population up a wire to the people who own him. Halfway through, they put him on hold, and the click that mutes his speaker does not mute the room at the other end of the line. So he tips his microphone away from his mouth, folds his arms, leans back against the wall with his eyes closed as though he has dozed off waiting, and listens to a group of strangers work out how soon to collapse his silo on top of everyone living inside it. Before we go further, you should know exactly what you are watching. This is not Hugh Howey. This is Silo 49, Going Dark, written by Ann Christy and published in 2013 with Howey's personal permission, in the years when he opened his world to other writers and let them sell what they wrote in it. None of this happens in wool, or shift, or dust. It happens in the gap between them, in a silo Howey never takes us to. This is the story of a silo sentenced to death by committee, which found out about it first because somebody forgot to switch off a microphone. Full spoilers ahead. Let's start with the silo they decided to throw away. The silo in this story is not rebelling against anything, and that is what makes it strange. In Howey's books, a silo dies because its people rise up and have to be put down. This one is simply running out of people. On the morning the story opens, the population stands at 1,563, down more than 400 in less than a year, in a place that once held over 5,000. The water is poisoned, and not quickly enough to be dramatic about it. It fills the wards with cancers, turns most pregnancies into miscarriages and stillbirths, and leaves the children who do survive with damaged hearts and lungs and memories. Everything else is failing the way an understaffed thing fails. There has been no sheriff for 2 days, because the last one died of cancer, having told almost nobody that he was ill. And when Silo 1 asks what happened to him, Graham answers with 3 words that tell you how this silo lives. Cancer. What else? The cafeteria on level 1 has closed for want of anyone to run it, and on levels 4 and 6, the apartment doors hang chained shut in the dark because there is nobody left to watch them. And on the instruction of Silo 1, the head of IT has been dosing the drinking water with a calming drug and a small measure of the drug that erases memory. It is working, in the narrow sense that there have been no suicides at all since the last report was filed. It is also producing 9 separate written reports of parents who did not collect their children from childcare because they had forgotten that they had any. The man who signs off on that dosing is called Graham Newton, and he has been lying to Silo 1 for most of his working life. Graham is past 60. He lives on level 5 and works 29 levels below it, in IT on level 34. The heads of IT hand one trick down to each other. Wear the headset pushed back a little, so the pads rest barely on the outer curves of the ears. Graham does not know exactly why it helps, and nobody has ever explained it to him, and he uses it every single time he speaks to Silo 1. He learned the work from his uncle, a big man with the unfortunate name of Newt Newton, who took a teenage Graham to the cabinet that hides the way down, stopped him before they opened it, and put a hand on each shoulder. "Graham, I'm serious. They will know if you lie. Just tell the truth." Only afterwards, once he had passed and been accepted as Shadow, did his uncle explain what would have followed if he had failed, which was a quiet cup of poisoned tea, administered with genuine regret, exactly as the order required. He also knows what these people will do, because he was sitting in that same room wearing that same headset when Silo 12 was shut down, listening while everyone inside it was lost. In all his decades as head, there have been only 4 cleanings, and the last was his own school teacher, an old woman dying alone. He sat at her bedside and told her about the unease in the silo and the filthy censors and his own fears. And then he told her the silo's real secret, which is what the cleanings are for. She volunteered, and he came away feeling dirtier than the censors she was going to wipe. He asked what she had loved best in the children's books, and she said the birds, and that it might be wonderful to fly and never use the stairs again. So he had a pouch of poppy extract fitted inside her helmet so that she would feel nothing, and asked his programmers to fill her last view with birds. She winked at him as they came to seal it, and through the little round window he was watching from, she mouthed the words, "Thank you." The call that changes everything begins as routine. Graham reports the water results honestly because water is the one subject where honesty serves him, and walks them through the pattern that contamination climbs as you climb, that it is worst at the uppermost plant, and that their new dosing instructions have made the miscarriages worse. Then they put him on hold, and the room at the other end stays open. What reaches him first are only fragments, that the place is unsustainable, that it would be best to end it, that it never developed a robust population. Then a younger voice takes over and starts explaining the problem properly, to men who are clearly deciding something. Silo 49 sits at the edge of the silo field, nearest a lake that was dug when the site was built to drain the runoff from the silos themselves, which means it has been collecting, in the speaker's own words, the worst byproducts imaginable from more than a dozen silos, along with the heavy metals still settling out of the sky and rolling downhill into it, and the engineering reports point to a crack in the bedrock carrying all of that down and through. And then comes the sentence that decides it. We have all the data we need, at least in theory. We can easily counter this same effect if it happens in any other silo. It's too late for this one. This is teratogenic. Graham does not know the word and looks it up afterwards in the legacy. What he takes from it is that the damage passes from one generation to the next, which is not something, as the voice puts it, they want to carry forward. They agree, and then Silo 49 is saved for a while by paperwork. Another voice concurs but wants more data first, because the silo keeps no medical records on its computers. The deep voice allows that more information would be better, observes that this silo is not viable but not particularly dangerous either, and delivers the recommendation. Gather 30 years of medical data, and after that, terminate the silo. Only then does a raspy voice speak up, one that reminds Graham of his uncle's voice as the cancer took him, and it asks the question nobody else has. If this is being caused by a crack in the bedrock, might dropping the silo simply spread that crack to the others? A man called George answers, and his answer is how Graham learns what the ending would look like. The silos collapse only on the inside, each level coming down onto the next. Charges at the top and in the middle begin it, triggered remotely from Silo 1, and the weight of the structure does the rest, the way you would bring down a tower in a crowded city. Then he hesitates and admits that the stress of dropping a silo could widen a crack or turn it. It's a risk. They come back on the line, warm and reassuring, and promise him a formula that will fix his water. He thanks them, and on his way out his eye catches the little white numbers above the row of jacks and stops on the number 40. Graham needs help, and the man he turns to has been quietly prepared for years without knowing it. Wallace is his best friend of more than 50 years, a primary school teacher turned politician who is now the silo's interim mayor. And for a long time, Graham has been supplying him with containers of farm water, which is never dosed because the drugs interfere with plant growth. Wallace knew about the containers and was given a reason that was not the real one. Somewhere back in the past, Graham decided he could not be the only undulled man in a silo of thousands and quietly gave himself a second one. He tells Wallace everything across a single night, in layers, and Wallace moves through disbelief and a short burst of anger and comes out the other side excited rather than broken. He asks whether there are really 50 silos, all full of people. Yes, there are 50, but one of those is Silo 1 and I don't think they count. Then the larger revelation. Graham has been talking to other silos for years, on a distorted line, at arranged times. He did not build the network and does not know who started it, only that one day the socket for Silo 40 lit up and he answered. It is deliberately fragmented, so that each head of IT knows only the silos he has already spoken to, and nobody holds the whole map. They need a third, and the third is Grace, one of the last genuinely experienced electricians left in the silo. Graham recruits her by taking a sledgehammer to a switch box one level below IT and waiting for them to send him the best electrician they have. She reads him in under a minute, covers for him without being asked, and follows him into a dark broom closet, where he asks how far she is willing to go. I can't think of a single thing I wouldn't do, she answers. Grace is dying, slowly, and the book never puts a name to it. All it gives you is the lopsided swelling on the side of her throat that makes her wince when she swallows, and the fact that she climbs the stairs anyway. Graham builds a radio from instructions Silo 40 sent him long ago, and gets the parts home by volunteering for food duty and hiding them inside a sack of flat amaranth bread bound for the residents of his own level. When he gets on the air, a woman called Nella answers and fetches John, the head of IT in Silo 40. Graham blurts the whole thing out in one sentence. Silo 1 is going to blow up my silo. John's reply reframes everything, because Graham had only ever imagined cutting his own destruct lines and hiding, and the network has been preparing to go offline entirely. Here is the machinery, and it is the best thing in the book. 2 trunk lines run from each silo back to Silo 1. The upper one sits just beneath the surface, and Silo 40 dealt with it long before either of these men was making decisions by sending out a volunteer in a good suit who walked below the line of the hills in the dim time, cut every line where it joined the trunk, buried spare transmitters while he was out there, and never came back. That is the only reason any of these silos can talk to each other at all. The second line is on level 72, and touching it alone is forbidden, for a reason the book states plainly. If one silo tries and fails, Silo 1 may work out how to stop everyone who comes after, and every silo left would be at their mercy forever. So the plan runs in a strict order. Silo 40 stages a fake uprising and goes dark, pulling Silo 1's whole attention onto itself. Every silo in the network cuts its level 72 destruct line on the same signal. Nobody touches the cameras, because dead cameras would give it away immediately. And Silo 40 keeps signal traps on the cut lines, so that when the kill order comes down and finds nothing, a round-the-clock watch cuts the communications lines, and the feeds die exactly as they would if the building had come down on top of them. John is honest about the part nobody can solve. They have checked every schematic and every place where anything breaches the silo walls, and it looks like 2 trunk lines and nothing else. But, as he puts it, the cold, deep truth of it is that they just don't know. Silo 40 has volunteered to find out. Then he checks his clock and gives Graham the number. 11 hours and 17 minutes. Grace has about 20 levels to climb up to level 72. Graham and Wallace have almost 70 to come down, in a silo where the stairwell is the only route, and 2 old men descending in a hurry is exactly what a camera notices. Graham's answer is the cargo lifts strung through the gaps around the stairwell. He fought Silo 1 to get them built at all, arguing from the order itself that he could not do his job without them, and he won on conditions, one of which was that people would never under any circumstances ride them. Now he breaks his own bargain, wearing a hat pulled low against the landing cameras. Their cover is Wallace. At every landing he announces, loudly and joyfully, that he carries happy news of a new mother down in the deep, and he gets scattered applause and a few sad cries, and people take hold of the ropes to help. And while they are watching him, Graham reaches up and slams a tiny radio repeater home beneath the ledge, unnoticed because everyone puts a hand on the landing anyway, and he does it beneath every 5th one. They reach the level first, and wait in a foul, disused room, long enough to open the door for a sliver of light and hunt for something to sit on, before Grace puts her head in and wrinkles her nose at the smell. She has brought the tools and teaches both men to grip the cutters only by the coated handles in case the wires are live. Wallace has brought radios liberated from the sheriff's office, set to a channel nobody uses, safe because there are no longer enough deputies to monitor more than one. And Grace has already done the quiet work, getting a panel open by herself during the wait to confirm that the wire colors and tags in Silo 49 matched what Silo 40 had described, and they did. She kisses both men on the cheek, wishes them luck, and slips out to her own panel. There are 3 panels on level 72, big metal plates covering recesses cut into the concrete, behind a locked door and past heavy machinery. Graham has known about them most of his adult life and has always described what is inside them, privately, as very nasty surprises. Behind the plate is a conduit thicker than his waist, and inside it, a bundle of wire thicker than his thigh. Grace talks them through it over the radio. Cut the ties, spread the bundle, find one of the bigger black sleeves with more wires inside it, marked with the spiral stripe. Wallace finds his first, marked X249. Graham finds the same tag, and so does Grace, and she has them tie strips of cloth around each one with the ends hanging loose, so that even in the dark they can find the right bundle by feel. Then the radio comes alive with Nella's voice. "All silos, this is 40. Do it! Do it! Confirm!" Graham has to saw at it, opening and closing the cutters wire by wire, cursing through his teeth until the blades finally slam shut with a clack. Wallace comes through with a single word, "Done," and Grace follows with the same. He presses both transmit buttons at once so that everybody hears it. "This is Silo 49. We have cut the lines. I repeat, the lines are cut." And then the words become difficult. He cannot think what to say next. The radio starts sliding out of his hand without his permission. His left hand has stopped working properly, and the bright pain in his neck is moving down his arm. Behind him, the radio on the floor is filling with the voices of the other silos, a chorus of "done" and "complete" arriving in foggy blobs of sound, and he concentrates everything he has left into one more press of the button. "Wallace, Grace, thank you. We're safe. I... The book never names what killed him. It gives you the symptoms and stops there. Grace reaches him first, drops to her knees, lifts his head onto her folded legs, and talks to him about how much he will be missed, in case any part of him can still hear it. Wallace comes around the last corner, makes a sound like a kicked dog, and when she finally gets to him, he goes into her arms like a child, repeating the same thing over and over, that they were going to fix this. What Grace and Wallace do next is careful, deliberate work, and they do it with his body still warm. They move Graham out to the landing so nobody can connect him to the panels. Wallace takes the key from around his friend's neck and hands it to Grace, having already been given its twin. They erase what traces they can, close the panels, hide a tool bag in a storeroom so long unused that the shelving wears a coat of rust like a red blanket, and only then does Wallace report the death on the police channel. Grace leaves to walk all those levels back down, and because there are almost no porters left, Wallace takes the ropes himself and brings Graham up in the swaying fabric buckets. At every landing there are people waiting, perhaps some of the same people who waved them down so cheerfully a few hours earlier, and they say nothing at all. They hook the basket, help him out, transfer his friend to the next bucket with enormous gentleness, and when Wallace reaches for the ropes, they push his fingers away and heave the line for him, each finding room for their hands until almost no rope can be seen between the many fingers. It goes like that all the way to the upper farms, where his wife was planted years before, and where the tiny infant who would have been his daughter had gone before her. That night, Grace asks over the radio whether she might get a ride to the funeral, so Wallace calls every remaining deputy and wires the one administration desk still manned around the clock. The next morning, she finds a deputy waiting at her landing and looks up to see yellow banners waving as far above her as she can see, each one meaning that the station is manned and waiting for her. 90 levels and nearly 4,000 feet, and she does it in an hour. Only jumpers travel faster, and then only in one direction. The turnout at the graveside is thin, and even the priest arrives late. Grace reaches for Wallace's hand while the words are said, and the two of them eat tomatoes in honor of their fallen third, throw the dripping remains in after him, and lick the juice from their fingers so that nothing is wasted. Going through his rooms later, they find 4 books hidden at the back of a desk drawer, 3 of them written by Graham himself. They are not an encyclopedia. They are a blueprint for a better silo, and on one page there is a small hand-drawn grid of numbered circles, a few of them with red crosses inside, and one off in the corner with a single word written beside the number 49. Us. And on the first page of the book marked 1, Grace finds the line he had started saying in his last days. We can be different. We can be the good. A few days later, in a control room several hills away, a junior operator called Gary is watching screens and counting the minutes until his shift ends. Silo 1 is consumed with the crisis in Silo 40, so everyone else is getting only the standard minimal checks. 49 has a scheduled check-in that day, though, so Gary has half an eye on it. And then smoke begins pouring into the room beneath IT until it almost completely obscures the view. The smoke alarm reaches Silo 1 about a minute later. Gary flips through every other camera in the silo, and everything looks entirely normal. The director arrives, a new man with cold blue eyes and a habit of pressing a finger to his lips while he thinks. He has Gary walk him through IT, then asks for the cafeteria on level 1 and finds it empty with the tables stacked. A line forms between his eyebrows and deepens, and Gary cannot tell whether it is confusion or concern. Behind him, men start saying that they should terminate, and an old man, whose voice quavers and whose authority nobody questions, speaks quietly from outside the ring of heads. I think they are going to do that to themselves. Let's see what happens. They can watch, he says, and see whether anyone comes to the airlock, and terminate then if they need to. Then every screen goes black. Sir, this is a no-input situation. I'm not getting a ping back at all. The silo is gone. The director orders termination anyway. Gary slots his key beside the button marked 49. The director slots his a moment later. They both turn. Gary confirms the number aloud, and the director presses the oversized button until it clicks home and the deadly contact is made. Into dead wire. Nothing happens, and nobody in that room will ever find out that nothing happened. The director smiles, which is a terrible thing to watch, and tells him to keep monitoring 40. As for the other, well, 49 is history now, just forget about it. Decades later, an old man is being wheeled about in a chair with little wheels bolted to the legs, holding a newborn. His hands shake badly now. He is the oldest person in the silo, and the people have come to believe that placing a newborn in the arms of the eldest passes on some of that long life. So they bring their children to him, and he blesses them, and he makes a point of meaning it every time. His name is William, and it used to be Wallace, because after all of it, he and Grace created one final forgetting for the silo, rewrote its history one more time, and then smashed the machines that put the drugs in the water. The book gives that act a single sentence and never shows it to you. There is no scene of it happening, no argument about whether to do it, and no account of how it was carried out. It is the most uncomfortable thing in the story, and Ann Christy leaves it lying there deliberately. The story they wrote is this: the silo is haven, the safe place made so that some part of humanity could survive the destruction the others brought down in their hatred of human beings. The others are Silo 1, remembered as a different species, and the people built on it themselves. On the memorial plaque, there was one circle with an X through it for Graham, and Wallace replaced it with one that added a second circle for Grace. When he came back on the day the memorial opened, he found 3 circles linked in a triangle, with the X binding all of them, because somebody had added his name without asking. Grace, who had chosen to be called Lila by then, laughed her throaty laugh at his outrage and told him he ought to be just as embarrassed as she was, and he took her hand and kissed her for the first time. William's own verdict on what they did is the line the whole book turns on. They had created a new mythology, and it was no less a lie in words than the other, but it was closer to the truth in its meaning and intent. The girl born on the day Graham died was called Jewel, and he renamed her Livy, because it means life. Lila has been gone a long time, and she left him here with a stupid name like William, alone in his memories. For a while they used to ask their distant friends in Silo 40 for advice. Then 40 dropped off the line suddenly and without warning, and never returned another call. And at the very end, dozing in his bed, he hears water in the pipes and air in the vents, and children somewhere down the corridor. What he heard most was life. Good, strong life. What stays with you about Going Dark is how much it refuses to answer. We never see the water fixed, though Graham's full solution is sitting in that hidden drawer, and everything in the epilogue suggests it worked. We never learn what happened to Silo 40, only that they stopped answering. And the largest act in the book, the forgetting that erased a silo's entire history and replaced it with a kinder story, happens off the page in one sentence, told to us decades later by the man who did it. Which leaves the question the book is actually about. Graham saved every person in that silo, and every person who would ever be born into it. And then he died on a concrete floor without knowing whether it had worked. What Wallace and Grace did with the silo he left them was to use the tyrant's own drug on their own people, take away their history, and hand them a myth instead, because they could not think of anything better to give them. So I want to know what you think. Were they right? If you want the other half of this story, the one Hugh Howey actually wrote, my video on Silo 40 covers the same event from inside Silo 1, watching those screens go dark. Thanks for watching.